welcome back to another lap guide video. My name is Bart, and today we'll be taking the iRacing Formula iR-04 around the Long Beach circuit. Let's get into the hot lap. Okay, so we're going down the main straight at Long Beach. This is just the first corner, which isn't really a corner. Just minimize distance, stay close to the wall on the right-hand side, getting a toe for whoever you're following in the race. Okay, the first corner, strange corner, in a GT race or endurance race, you'd be a bit cautious for cars on the right, on the pit exit. So here's got quite an aggressive track limit from iRacing. I believe you won't just get an off track, you will get a slowdown. It's pretty understandable because you don't really want people cutting this in a race. So you can't really go any further than this. You can see the blue line, the blue to yellow line. This red line here is okay to go over. But this blue line that turns into yellow up here, that is, we can sit on it, but we can't go any further than this. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so a little bit tricky in terms of we can't really see much going to this corner. It's a third gear corner. It's kind of like I'd say medium speed left-hander, but quite tight in terms of we can't see anything for the exit or the entry, the walls. Braking point, you can see for me, is just between the 400 and 300 feet boards because we're in the US, around this modal start of the sponsor advertising on the right. This is a corner where you're probably going to want to be on the slightly earlier side of braking, just in general. It's just, I think it's generally you'll see on this track and in this car, we want to be just a little bit, it's got a bit of understeer in it with the fixed. There's a lot of bumpy corners and big curves and stuff. And if you're not on the throttle early and you haven't got the car, let's say, settled earlier in the corner, if you really go in on the edge, you're going to lose it on a bump or you're going to get a poor exit. So that's probably just a general trend, I'd say, for the track. But yeah, braking just off the 400 board on the right. Pretty hard hit the brakes here. Just trying to be really efficient in a straight line down to third gear and then bleed off as we go towards the inside apex. With this inside curve, you can, the car will take running on this. You can see that it goes up here on this ridge. You can take that. I don't think it'll really help. It kind of bounces it a bit. It can sometimes help hook the car. There's a limit to that, though. So I would generally just try and you can see there's also the little groove in the bottom of the track where it sinks in. Just try and get up to this point. So I think this is the right amount of curve, really. More than this, and you're going to be thrown off, and less, and we're leaving some bits of free space left to take. Yeah, so in here, throttle before I reach the inside curve and start picking up. And this wall is a little bit tricky. You're gonna, to be quick, you're always going to be on the limit of this. So it's tricky for people who don't know the track very well. and people less experienced. So just keep that in mind, that this exit is really limited. And this is why I'm also saying it's this corner. Don't go barreling in tons of speed right at the limit of the brakes necessarily straight away, because I know from a few practice laps you'll find yourself losing the rear and ending up in that outside wall. So just keep that in mind. Focus on the exit, early throttle pickup here. Force yourself out with the throttle in this gap behind where the barrier extends out here. Now, make sure you hold on the red line that we've got here and stay up to the right-hand side wall, because it's going to help us prepare for the next corner, this kind of 3, 4, 5 section around the very photo opportunist roundabout. So holding the wall on the right here. We got these sponsor boards, thankfully, because not really much in the way of board references, and this isn't, because we're not in a true straight line. It's a bit difficult to judge that kind of thing. So I always like to think of this corner. We want to brake straight is the first thing. The track's not going straight, but we want to brake straight. And we want to get a good angle for the exit. So we're really going to brake on a diagonal to the track, but in a straight line for ourselves, if that makes sense. So we hold the right-hand wall as long as we can. You can see here I turn away just at this Firestone sign. As long as you can, and then you just dip right a little bit and then make sure we're straight to hit the brakes while trying to open up this right-hander as much as possible that's coming up here. So trying to get as close as possible to this left-hand wall in a straight line for our braking. Cool. So you can see here, we're just trying to open up this right-hander, braking a straight line. Still a relatively heavy brake, just quite a slow corner. Again, I wouldn't really go any more curb than this. If you go on the this cement curbing, it's not. It can hook it around a little bit, but I think in this car it just upsets the traction. You get some rear wheel spin, inside rear wheel spin with the open diff. So I'll keep that in mind. Main thing is opening the corner up and rolling a bit of speed as well, while keeping it really tight. You see late in the corner. If you're reaching the inside curb too early, that's probably the main issue here, I would say. And if you do that and you meet the inside quite late, you'll be able to pick up the throttle a bit more aggressively a bit later. Straighten up the car. Use all the track on the left-hand side, getting really close to the wall. Okay, so you can see we change up from second to third. And again, positioning is really important. This is a corner, again, where I just say, I always remind myself, like, brake early, brake soft, early throttle pickup. Because we want to be, in this car, we want to be pretty much full throttle by the time we're going through the apex of the corner. So you'll see now I just have a soft brake, really soft here, mainly just help the nose get in and help the car turn, just and to slow it down a bit. And this corner, you can see there's a bit of positive camber. So it is really important that you're in on the earlier side and that we're getting all the way to the bottom of the corner. All right. There we go. So a positive throttle pickup there, quite aggressive. Grips up on the apex, force yourself out to the outside wall. And then actually a very similar corner in technique. The shape of the corner is a bit different as through this next right, you'll see on exit, the track really drops away. So it's really important to get the steering straight on the exit, which I'll show in a second. Once again, street circuit stuff, make sure we're using all the track on the left-hand side here, going up to the wall. Get some practice, get used to that. We've got these red lines are quite useful, especially in the F4, you can see your tires. So it's good to be able to have that to reference where we are. So you can see I'm braking here just before these turning signs, let's say, for the intersection come out. Early brake, bit of throttle here. You can clip this curb like this. This curb is super, super aggressive, especially the second part of it. I do not recommend take it in this car. It really upsets the exit. So this is as much as you want to take. Just clip kind of the end of it here. If you go over it really early and bottom out in the car, it'll kind of throw it off balance. So try not to do that. Okay, so you can see really early throttle pickup here. I think that's super key on this corner because Otherwise, you'll be fighting the rear a lot down the hill. And you can see, I just want to show you quickly, I really get the steering lock off as the track goes to off camber. You can see there's this is like the peak, let's say, of the road, and then it really drops away here. If you hold the lock on as you go over the crest, what's going to happen is your front's going to lose grip. Okay, so if you hold the steering lock on, the front's going to lose grip. The front's going to slide, and then it's going to grab, and then the rear's going to slide. So initially you're going to understeer, so you're going to put some more lock on as you go down the hill, and then it's going to grab, and you're going to get a bit of oversteer. And generally, you correct yourself, and you end up somewhere in the outside wall or having to back off. So that's why, just if you're looking in the bottom left corner here, look at my steering lock. In time with going onto this part of the track, I try and get the steering lock off very quickly. Okay. You can also see I don't reach full throttle, and that's because you won't really be able to unless you get a really, really good run. You kind of just have to manage it as you go over these bumps here. And then you can see I get the steering lock off, then I can apply full throttle and push out to the wall. And the other thing as well is it's okay if it looks like for a second you're going to go wide, as long as you're in control of the car. If you're fighting and you're losing the rear, that's when you're going to end up with a crash. But if you see here, I take the steering lock off, but then I put it back on later. Now that the car's settled, we've got a bit more grip again, I can start turning away from the wall once more. Bit of a tricky corner out. Okay, so this next left-hander, I'd say main thing for this corner, I'm always reminding myself it's third gear down from fifth, is brake on the slightly earlier side. There's quite a few bumps, like they're not massive bumps, but a little bumps in the braking zone. They really upset this car on the entry phase. So just if you're really on the limit of grip all the way through the braking, it upsets the car all the way through the exit of this corner. So I would just recommend don't brake super early, but just on the earlier side, so we can have an early throttle pickup and have a lot more control of the car in the exit, a bit like we spoke about for the first corner. Okay, so braking just before the 200 board on the right. Very difficult to line yourself up with the wall here, because if you line yourself up with this part of the wall, you can see it actually curves away from us, so then we're almost pointing in too much. So then you need to kind of aim in a straight line, not exactly with the red line either, but more with where the 100 board is, where we're going to be turning in from our widest point to the apex. So keep that in mind. It will take a bit of practice. I know I've clunked this wall a few times, so where this bit sticks out here. So just be aware of that. Take a bit of practice. Okay. Turn in there. And you can see that this is really the key for me. Two things. One is getting really, really close to the inside wall, which we do there. The other thing is throttle before we've reached the red and white. And you can see it's not much, but just a little bit from me here. And I can't go full throttle because the car doesn't have the grip to take it at the moment. We've got a lot of load laterally through the car with the amount of steering we're putting on. We're really pushing it right now, so we can't go full throttle. But we want to be on some part throttle just again to settle the rear. I think it's really important out of this corner, and you'll see it's quite bumpy on exit. So a little bit of throttle, and then as the car starts to grip on the exit, you can see it's quite a big bump there as we go over this intersection. The car will try to bounce away from you. So that's why, again, we've got to just try and keep the steering relatively straight as we've got the throttle, use the track. And then this next corner, I think people take far too long generally to prepare. It's straight away. It's straight away. As soon as you get the grip, so that you're not sliding, costing yourself time, putting steering lock on, we need to get over to the left-hand side for this next right-hand corner. As early as possible, you can see I'm basically in line with the left-hand side of the track by the 300 board, so I would aim for that. I'm braking just before this 200 board, so we don't have much time. We really don't have much time. And I promise you, if you reach the left-hand side of the track later, you're going to brake later, and you're probably going to end up easy to brake too late here, because this feels quite early, but trust me, we need to brake early here. You won't get off track for going inside this curb, inside this red line that's coming up for this right-hand corner. So we're actually trying to get as close as possible to the wall kind of behind this lamp post here. A bit hard to see, but you'll see in a second. Not a long brake, heavy initially, and then bleed out pretty fast. Down to third gear again. Just have to be patient here. The front will bite as you kind of roll into this corner around now. And what's tricky, you can see we get really close to the wall here, and that's what I mean by meeting where that lamppost was and cutting the inside line. of this red line. What's really important is, once again, an early throttle pickup. If you don't pick up the throttle early here and you're just coasting, the car will bounce over the bumps quite badly. We won't have much control of where it's going, and our exit's going to be quite poor. So if we can get a nice early throttle pickup to settle the car and to get a good exit, it makes a huge difference here. So you can say I'm full throttle by the time I'm up to the wall on the inside here. And it really settles the car. So really, really focus on your exit for that corner. Okay, quite a tricky right-hander coming up. Again, it's another corner where I always feel like but this is in every car, I always feel like I overpush the entry, or I want to overpush the entry, because you think it's kind of like a fast sweeping corner, but it's quite tight on the exit, and there's really not much room, so keep that in mind. So you can see on this lap, braking at this white line here just after the 300 board, again, positioning, using all the track on the left. Awkward with the way the wall comes out. If you stay right up to the wall and stay straight, you'll obviously run into the wall up here. So either try and angle in a bit or leave a little bit of space. Okay, down to third gear. You can use this curb. It can be useful to hook on. I would say you can use the first part of it. It doesn't make a huge difference if you're just a little bit off it versus just on it a little bit. Unlike in a GT car where you're probably all over the inside. But yeah, just make sure you're not on the red and white bits on the inside. They're pretty nasty. Okay, third gear. This corner is a lot more about attacking the entry, carrying speed than a lot of the previous corners, because there's not really much of an exit, and this section in general before we get to the final hairpin is all just carry momentum. Okay, so carrying quite a bit of speed there. You can see it's a heavy brake initially, but out of the brakes quite quickly. A little bit of brake on there just to help it turn. Picking up the throttle, using most of the track. This is one of these corners where there's a few ways of doing it. You can probably, you can still be quite quick, being about half a car width to the right here. So maybe a little bit more curb and be half a car width further right of where I am. You can also be even closer to the wall and be right in the limit. And it's a balance of how much speed you carry through that right hander versus the next left. I wouldn't say necessarily that one is better than the other, but it's just a matter of balancing and seeing which one works for you and how much speed you can carry. It's probably a little bit lower risk as well if you're not absolutely on the edge of hitting the wall every time on this right-hander. Because you can see here, we're not going to have enough time to get back to the right-hand side of the track. So it's a balance for how much speed we want to take through the corner. It's going to be quite a late throttle pickup there. And this double left is just a lift. Make sure we're not braking. That's the main thing I would say. And the throttle is going to be your control through here, right? Yes, obviously you have the steering, but really in terms of controlling the balance of the car, if you feel like you're not turning, we need to lift a bit more to get more weight on the nose and help the car turn. And if you feel like you're losing the rear a bit, pick up the throttle a bit, just sit the weight back down onto the rear axle and stop it sliding so much. I'd say main key for this bit is I always like having this reference here next, getting as close as possible to the end of the red and white curve on the left is a good positioning reference, let's say, for this point of the corner, because sometimes you feel a bit lost through here, but I think that's a good indicator. As you can see, I'm right up to the left-hand side there. And this allows us to be on the right angle and kind of get enough time to position ourselves for the hairpin. So this left that goes into the braking zone for the hairpin is quite tricky, because in this car, you can't really start braking when you get straight. You have to brake before then. So it's not perfect, if you know what I mean. You can't be perfectly straight for when you want to hit the brakes, and the car's not going to act perfectly as a result. This left-hander, once again, in terms of positioning, it's really super important here that we're using all the track. So be as close as possible to this red and white curbing on the left. And I'd say this rubber line here really, it will help the car just grip as well, but it's a good way to reference where you are in the right spot of the track as well for this corner. So you can see just lifting through the left, and then I just have a little bit of brake on at the moment, and I'm going to build up the brake pressure as the car straightens and as we get more available grip from the tire, because as it's steering and as it's loaded through the left, it's not going to be able to brake as efficiently, and if we try to brake, we're going to either upset the rear or we're going to lock the tires. So it's better just to be careful with the brake and then wait to get it fully straight before we hit more brake pressure. Because you can see here, now I've got it straight, I'm going to hit more brake pressure, but it's important that we do start braking a little bit before that. And it also helps settle and kind of control the car a little bit here. Just a little bit of brake, and once you get it straight, which is after this this bit of curbing, I feel stops turning, and you can see there's also a change in tarmac here. That's also a fairly good reference as well for you. Now you can build up the brake pressure, be straight, don't get sucked into the turning into the apex quite yet. Just get a nice little moment, a few car lengths here where we can be straight and brake efficiently down to first gear. And then, like I said, use the rubber as a reference where to turn in here. You go up to the rubber, turn in off the rubber, on the rubber, right on the edge of it. And yeah, first gear hairpin. Main thing I would say for this corner is you don't really want to go any harder than this in terms of if you go deeper, you fall off the rubber part of the track and you lose grip and it's quite slow. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I would say about it is generally you probably want to roll a little bit of speed. I think the trend here for most people is I've really got to slow down this hairpin. Yes, like get the car slowed, but as we turn in, you can see how quite quickly come out of the brake. And that's where you just roll a bit of speed. I'd rather you roll a bit of speed and turn in a bit earlier for this hairpin and hook the car on the inside curb than, let's say, do a more traditional hairpin line and go deeper into the corner, slow the car down more and cut back. That doesn't really work here. Just once you kind of reach this widest point, you get the car slowed down enough, just turn in, hook the car on the inside curb. And I'm just on the brake a little bit. And this is where I find this corner really tricky, is that you brake efficiently, right, in that middle phase once you've got it straight. But then this point here, you want to come out of the brake enough to roll the speed, but you do want to still keep a tiny bit of brake on just to trail brake and keep weight on the nose and help the car turn. But it's also very, very easy here to lock the fronts because it's so low speed and we've got so much steering lock on. It's really easy to brake the front tires as we're turning here. So just really careful on the brakes. So we want just a tiny amount of brake pressure. You can see I've got like 5% brake for a little bit there, and that's just to help the car turn. So we kind of roll into this curb. As you come off the curb, get off the brake. The car should hook up nicely. We can get the throttle a little bit before we get the steering lock off here, just because it's so low speed. But it is a really important factor that as soon as the revs build up, we get the lock off, okay? So you can see there, when the revs come up at the top of first gear, bang, we're really quick on the steering. So that's also really important for your exit as well. We don't want to be sliding here. It will cost you quite a bit of time. And using just all the track here on the exit for what's the longest straight on the track. And that's the end of the lap. Okay, everyone. Thanks for watching this lap guide video. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. You can also join the CDA Discord as well in the description. And be sure to like and subscribe so you'll see the next lap guide video. See you next week.